Today we have Christy Bareijsza. Christy Bareijsza is an industry expert with renowned sophistication and recognized by Fortune 500 companies and influential tastemakers alike. As the creative director of Buy Red Carpet events, she develops innovative concepts that encompass full sensory experiences with a signature style that surpasses expectations. Her refined depth of work is actualized through a unique portfolio that maintains timeless appeal, while her distinct combination of talents have helped create a myriad of press-worthy events for a notable list of corporate and celebrity clients. Welcome to Eventus 365, the podcast that's all about corporate events and the magic behind the scenes. I'm your host, Yanique DaCosta, and I am excited to take you on a journey through the world of corporate events. But before we dive in, let's talk about the stress of creating marketing material for your events. We all know how tough it can be when deadlines are tight and resources are limited, but guess what? YKMD Visual Communications has got your back. Our design firm specializes in working with corporate event professionals just like you, and we're here to help take the stress out of creating stunning graphics for your event. Our team of expert designers can deliver custom brand-compliant designs in just 12 hours. So whether you need branding, signage, marketing materials, or anything else, YKMD's got you covered. Okay, now that that's done, let's start the show. Thank you so much, Christy, for chatting with us. I just kind of want to jump in and right to the questions, all the things. Okay. So looking at events by red carpets, just Facebook alone, it feels like you take events like a whole new world. It's like curating and planning internationally influenced events. And this is a one that I might not even say correctly. The Ubuntu Award.
Ubuntu.
Right,
Yeah.
Ubuntu
South Africa.
The Museum of Natural History, or events for China Southern Airlines. Talk to me about what it's like to create those kind of internationally influenced events.
Well, when I try to create an event, I always want to be really understanding who the client is. So when you're doing an international event, you kind of basically have to take the fact that you're an American out of that event and really understand what the culture is, what there's different expectations. Sometimes there's different language barriers. There's a number of different things that come into play with events like that. Mm-hmm. So, when I do those, I really try to research in the beginning and kind of do a deep dive of the country or of the brand or what is happening to really understand how I'm going to create an event around what they're trying to do. So for instance, the Ubuntu Awards, they were an award given to an individual that does a lot for South Africa, whether it was a charitable organization, whether it was a travel company that really focuses on their trade and travel and supporting their economy. What makes it really unique is a lot of times those events are funded by the government. Mm-hmm. So there's a different set of rules on how to work through things, what can be paid, what can't be paid in different ways as far as it's taxpayer dollars. Everything has to be fully documented, as well as there's different cultural items. As far as what I've learned is when there's an ambassador, the ambassador has to sit first. The ambassador has to have his plate dropped first. It has to have his, it's mostly a he. I try to be as feminist as I can, but it was mostly a he, his plate gets picked up first too. So it doesn't have to be obvious, but it's those slight little innuendos that, as much as we are Americans and we try to think that everybody is just equal and it is what it is, it's a cultural thing. And you have to respect their culture as we have to respect, everyone else's. Same thing with China Southern Air. They have certain colors that they use. They have certain, things that they use. I always like to get an individual that is fluent in both languages because that always helps me. And it helps in one and two ways. One way is it's a better way to communicate, but it's also too, if they're talking about me, now I know. So, and it happens. So I was like, oh, good to know. Thanks. But, it's one of those things where, it's really truly understanding that aspect of it and taking it out of I don't want to use the word selfish, but it's, we're in America. We want to do what Americans do, and everybody wants to do what we want to do. No, there's a big world out there, and there's just different ways to do it. And I think that's really an important thing, is to understand that culture and understand what those passions or those ticks are, or different things like that, and really be delicate with them, but also, embrace them, because that's what makes us so great, is the fact that there's, it's not just one kind of concept or one kind of idea or one kind of element that we should all be doing.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Cause number one, I feel like that's really fair, right? Sometimes, especially if we've really been in an industry for a long time, we can find ourselves really inundated by our own personal experiences or in our own personal culture and our own backgrounds, and not kind of like look at what else is out there that could possibly make this the most successful project, event, whatever it may be. And I think when you were talking about, getting someone who speaks both languages, I think that's like a really great like pushing point into, like when you're creating an event, like, that's like international and like has this like massive cultural influence. Do you typically hire vendors who are like familiar with that cultural narrative, or do you normally just do the research and then impart that education to your vendors and like what you want to see come through it?
It depends where I do it. For instance, I just did an event last week down in Mexico. Mm-hmm. I try to use in Cabo, I use a lot of the local vendors, because I'm also a big proponent in supporting the local industry. Even when it's, just different craftsmanships, different vendors, like just regular event vendors. If I can get it down there, I will always get it there first. And I always try to just embrace that aspect of it. When it's done in the US, it depends. It depends on how deep dive we're going. A lot of times I will have a consultant that I will reach out to, and that'll help me, or the client itself will be aware that, there's different cultures. So they'll make me aware of it too. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, it's the combination of kind of researching, speaking to the client, understanding what they want to do. If it's heavily in depth, then it's, getting a consultant on there too. I mean, I just did an event too for the, Wales, the country of Wales, which most people said, oh, it's England. And they're like, no, we are not. We are our own country. We are part of the United Kingdom, but we are our own country. We have our own flag. We have all of these things, which, it's for a small country. They're pretty mighty and they're pretty amazing. And I love them to death. But it's those things where people just assumed, they're into the royalty or they're into this, and they're not. and it's really truly learning that aspect of it, which is, I have a degree in history, so I'm a nerd when it comes to, just understanding, history and culture and different elements like that. So for me, it's fun, but it's also entertaining to see how people do react. Or, I had that client was great. We were teasing them. I said, because they get very upset about taxpayer dollars and things like that, and that's going to the royals. So they said, we'll never see you again. And I was like, no, I said, there's a couple single royals. So go date a royal and then you can pay for me. So it's been the running joke.
I'm sure they love that one.
We were laughing, and it's just become this running joke, but that's the thing, that it's about that embracing, and it's about that understanding. And it's also about building those relationships. It's, because we're not perfect. And with events, there's so many different elements in it. It's not just about cultural, because they may have some cultural things that might not work into the event flow. So how do you create that? Or how do you do that? Or, like I mentioned with the plating, where do we sit certain people, making sure that wait staff understands that it's, this is the contact we're going to have, and he's going to, handle this, and he's going to do it. Do I agree with it? Not really. But it's not my decision. I'm not going to fight, just governments, because, I feel like everybody's plate should go down at the same time. But, but that's taking the American out of it and putting the client and what their needs are first. And they see it as a sign of disrespect. And we have to honor that. We have to appreciate that,
It's funny. I remember my first time going to Wales, right? I was probably like maybe 6 or something.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. So you've really been to Wales. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was actually my first time like really appreciating a black sand beach. Like we have black sand beaches where I'm from in Jamaica, but like far and few in between. Right.
Yeah.
And I remember when someone was trying to explain to me that like no, this isn't England. I'm like, yes, it is. And they're like, no. And it was a whole thing. So I can only imagine like what it would have been like had I been an adult saying the same thing, because it was quite aggressive, and I was a kid. So and I can appreciate people having a strong opinion when it comes to their culture and like how they want to be perceived.
Right.
Kind of like rolling right off of that. When you were producing this event, right, for Wales, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you were doing like with Ryan Reynolds and
Rob McElhenney. Rob.
Yeah. I was like, there's one
who's
more
going crazy over the Eagles right now because they just won last. No, oh my God, they didn't win. What am I talking about? I had too many cocktails.
Yeah, it's like we're not judging. We're not judging. This is a safe.
No, listen, I'm from Jersey, so I'm a Jets Niners fan. So I didn't care too much. But,
you were like, whatever.
Yeah.
All right, run it back. You were talking about like, it's all good. It's all good. So Wales having like their own like flag and their own colors and like the fundamentals that they deem important. So like, I was looking at the pictures and the colors were really bold and bright and the visuals had like a lot of layers. Like, talk to me about how you came up with that concept and direction.
Well, it was a twofold because it was being filmed for TV. So it was being filmed for S4C, which is the national television network for Wales. So it was going to be on everyone's homes, which is really kind of cool. So when we had to do it, you have to take that into account too, because for us, like, I would love to have centerpieces and I would love to have these different elements that were not in that event. But when they're filming, you don't see it. So you have to see where their priorities are. And they wanted to focus on the red of the dragon, which was really amazing. And the color scheme really popped on camera. But it's very interesting how you can see the photos and then you see the video side of it. And it actually looks very different, which living in LA for 8 years and working on that side and working with events and TV, I kind of have, gotten that experience of really learning that I have to look at it through the camera and I have to look at it face to face, because I'm going to, worry about the 200 people that are there that are dining, entertaining, doing what they need to do. But then we also have to understand the 3 million people that will be watching it and how are they going to look at it? So with the color patterns, that had to come into play, as well as just different elements that we were using, because it's still early here. That they were using, because it would look great in person or it would look great on pictures, but on camera it looked like crap. So how do we combat that? So that was really kind of the priority number one, because they're the ones with the budget and they were paying the bill. And then priority number two was the branding, because the Wales government was also involved. So they had also their kind of concepts and things that they want to move forward with. And then it was the media company that had hired us. And the reason we were hired was because they were working in New York and they were having issues with the venue. The venue wasn't calling them back. The venue wasn't reaching out and, wasn't responding. So they found me online, believe it or not. And because I'm from New Jersey and lived in New York for most of my life, you can take the girl out of the city, but you can't take the city out of the girl. And, and I'm used to dealing with unions. I'm used to dealing with that. And I have a mouth like a truck driver. So it's, I'm behaving right now. So
we're here for it either way.
The beep, beep, beep. But that being said, it's like that, they hired me because for them on their side, culturally, they fend for themselves, but not in a way that New Yorkers do, where they're like, cut the shit, this is it, pick it up, like, let's go. Like, don't make me come down there. Because if I have to come down there, it's going to be a problem. I mean, I might come down with a slice of pizza and, bagel, but like, I'm coming down to deal with this. And that's how those relationships are built. So even on their side, from a cultural aspect, knowing that they were in America, they know that there were certain things that they needed, but then there was also things that they needed to get done in a way that they're not usually accustomed to, because it's a whole different scale, especially, I think, what's New York, 8 million, 9 million people in the city? I don't know after the pandemic, but that's double, almost triple the size of their whole country. It's a big difference.
I think that's fair. So as you were talking, by default, the first thing I thought of, like, it's that variant that I tell people between deciding, are you going to do an in-person event? Are you going to do a virtual event? Or are you going to do hybrid? There's no way that hybrid is not going to be more expensive because there's so many other things that you have to think about. And that's like literally essentially the same thing, right? Like you have to figure out like, what is the experience of the people at home versus what the experience of the people in person? Like, how do you get it to be engaging at home, and how do you get it to be engaging in person? What do you want them to take away from it? So I think it was really interesting that you kind of like spoke about that and spoke through that. And then also talking about the fact that like at the end of the day, right, even though you are here to, I don't want to say emulate, but to create a welcoming and holistic environment for someone else's culture, you're also meant to be a bridge to the American culture. Like, how do you function in this environment? Like, not make it a hassle for them. Like, that's one less thing that they have to deal with, and you can deal with efficiently, you know, slice of pizza, bagel, whatever, but still, I'm on my way and we're not doing this.
Right. And how do you do it? Because the unions are a whole animal in itself. The fast pace that, you know, they're like, what do you mean we need a sidewalk permit? I'm like, welcome to New York. Like, we need everything. We need a permit for everything. You got to breathe. You need a permit, you know, and it's, and just the cost, or how load in, load out. That was the biggest challenge.
And the times, right? Like, it's like, no, it's break time. Try having break time in the middle of your event.
Oh yeah. Well, that's why I said to them, we're going to feed everybody. And they go, what do you mean we're going to feed? Well, I'm like, listen, we're going to do you know, per diem, we're going to bring food in. They go, why? I said, because if we bring food in, it's 30 minutes and they eat and they're happy. They leave for an hour if we don't. So pick what you want. They can't work through it. No. No, that's labor laws. You cannot do that, you know? And as much as I would do that as a business owner, I'm used to that. And I just, you know, I'm like, whatever, I'll grab
like in Florida, it's like they'll work through it. But then you go to like Philadelphia and they're like, oh, no, your event is going to stop right now because you have union workers and they have to go take a break. And it's like,
oh yeah. And they will. And then if they're ticked off, they'll take a longer break. And it's just, New York, it's New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Philly. There's some big cities that are like that, where it's just like, and that's, you know, whenever I work back in New York again, I'm always first question, union or non-union. And there's nothing wrong with the unions. They're, you know, it's a wonderful thing, but it's also like, it's not cheap.
It's not. But you know what? And this is like a bit of a tangent, right? Like you get what you pay for at the end of the day, right? Like there are some instances where
sometimes with the labor sometimes can be a little, you know, now I'm going to get in trouble.
At least there are ways to hold people accountable, right? Like
correct.
There are processes in place to hold people accountable, so people are all right, if they do what they're supposed to do, well, we have to do what we're supposed to do at the end of the day. That's
correct.
And that's the best part of it, in my opinion.
And that's what I do in my contracts.
I don't think they listen to my show.
No, you never know. I'll be getting a call. Really? But basically what I do in my contracts too, which is really critical, especially if I'm working with a union building or a union facility, is I put in there that overtime is not approved unless I say so. We try to cap the labor every single time because there's just different things that the costs are there. And sometimes I do try to negotiate a union, non-union kind of agreement where in mostly hotels, but some properties, they'll allow you a 2-to-1 instead of having a full one or the other, because they also understand too, that when I'm bringing in my vendors, they're going to work efficiently. They're running through, you know, it's professional, but then on my end too, maintaining a production schedule, getting that approved in the beginning, you know, and it's accountability on our end too, to make sure that we're running fully on time, which, you know, I mean, doing this 20 some odd years, it's always that, unless there's some type of earthquake, there's some type of crazy thing that does happen, you know, it happens, you know, I mean, it's just, you know, but it's, you know, other than that, if you can work with, most of the venues understand the challenges that can happen and the cost aspect, because in New York, it's like most venues, it's $100,000 to just turn on the lights. Like you're not doing it, you know, and New York has a limited amount of time of year where it's nice. It's not like it's LA or Miami, you know, where you pretty much have a season all year. And it's also like, they get it, because most people don't walk in and say, oh, I have $500,000. They may not. I mean, there's a select group of those, but to put on an event in New York, it's not cheap. So, you know, they understand, and we try to all work together, and we, you know, we speak Jersey, and we just make sure it's done right, and we shoot straight. Yeah, there's no reason, I don't know, in this industry too, like, I just feel like, the more you're direct and the more you communicate with people and be straight with them on what your intentions are, I think you get more out of them.
I mean, that's a fact in any industry with any group of people, right?
You would like to think so, but
oh gosh, all right. I'm not gonna take us down that rabbit hole. Let's reel it back in. So talking about like, different groups of people and like working with different cultures, not just internationally, but also like within the United States, like, union culture versus non-union culture. Like, how does diversity, equity, and inclusion affect how you curate events, and why, if it does or doesn't at all?
It does. I'm a woman-owned business. And I am a big proponent of giving everybody a chance and giving a very fair chance, because a lot of people gave me a fair chance. And, the only accountability that I do hold to that is if I give you a fair chance, you better bring it, and that's one of the things that I tell a lot of people. I'm like, however you get your foot in the door, but you better be the best one there. And it's not because of anything else than growing up in the Northeast. It's about competition. It's about being the best. It's about surviving. And because everybody's always looking for bigger, better, faster. So I like to work with smaller companies because I feel like they care more. I feel like there's more of an involvement in that. And also too, I'm talking to people. So for me, if there's an opportunity to have more of a diverse group, or if I'm doing something, I was working on a project, they ended up not going through with it because the business is, our economy has been a little bit shaky. So there's been things like going on, but it was specifically for diversity and inclusion. And what they did like about my company was when they looked at it and they saw the vendors and they saw that they were different races and different ethnicities and different, men and women, but it was all very balanced. And part of it, I think I probably do subconsciously, and part of it I do consciously. Because it's not always, for me, it's always just been about, let's get those good people in and let's get those people that really do that. And I think coming from the Northeast, there's such an overwhelming, there's just so many different people. And there's so much influence of, Caribbean and international and South America. I don't want to say international, but Caribbean, South American, European, African. There's so many different things that it's like, it's easier. Whereas being here in Texas and being here in Dallas,
it's a lot more difficult. Yeah.
It has been a lot more difficult. So, my florist, she's from Miami and she's actually Latina, and I fly her in because I know I'm going to get what I need from her because she is the best. But I also know that, she understands it too. So it's like, it's kind of that balance of like working together, but really, embracing who we are and embracing what we bring to the table, but then kind of meshing it into, which is, what this country is supposed to be about. It really is, but it's gotten lost in the ways. But like, for me, it's more about, just, I don't know. I like balance. I don't like people around me that say the same thing, do the same thing. Like, I like to be challenged. And when you bring in people from different cultures and different aspects and different backgrounds, they tend to challenge you. And that's kind of cool because it makes you a better person and it makes them a better person. And it's just, there's no bad side to it as far as I'm concerned, but Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate that. I'm going to tell a really bad joke right now. So I run ads for my agency. I have a design firm, right? We only like do designs for corporate event planners, trade show marketers. Running ads, and the ads, depending on which one it is, like there's like some lead capture that happens. If you don't know what lead capture is,
I do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, mind you, I was like, anyway, whatever. So, I was going through, just to kind of see, like, cause I was like, there's like a significant amount of leads coming in right now. I just want to like understand like who these people are and like whatever. So I'm like going through the list, and there's one person who goes, and their first name is "Who would ever work with you?" And then their last name is "Go back to where you came from." And then their email was something it was like a very long strung together sentence just to let them know. I mean, just to let me know how much they don't like me. And I strangely wasn't annoyed. I was just like, oh, that's so sad.
It's sad.
I was like, why do you have this much time?
Like you had to go, like I meant that much to you that you had to create this whole email. I had a client that we parted ways a bit early. This was last year. They sent something out because I noticed that they didn't include all the federal holidays. Now, we're going to guess which ones we're missing. We're just going to play the game. So we're going to guess which ones we're missing in January and June. So
sure.
My thing was, if it's a federal holiday and it's honored, no matter what it's a federal holiday. It is, your employees are all different diversities. What does that say about you? And if I notice it, wouldn't you think it's better me noticing it as the blonde hair, blue eyed girl, and I'm 42 different ethnicities in Europe, but it's also one of those things where it's like, the theory of what it is. It's like, if I noticed it and you're worried about your reputation and whether or not your heart is in it or you're not, you should do the right thing. That's just the way I feel with businesses. Like, just do the right thing. And the fact that they kind of did it, but then they were just giving people a half day off. And I'm just like,
what are you going to do on this half day?
I'm like, also like too. And then I'm just like, if you give a day of Easter, and Easter's not, I don't even know if, I guess Easter is a federal holiday, but it's like, there's certain things. Yeah. But it's like, there's certain things that you do. And it's just like, you make these choices. And when they sent out kind of like to honor it, then they tried to overcompensate for it. And their clientele, the responses that they got it was amazing in the sense of, this is at the time it was 2022. And it's like, how is this okay? Like, but like, as a company, then you need to address it in the sense where this was so overwhelming and they were kind of just doing it wrong, that it's like, you need to start making decisions on who you are as a brand and who are the people that are around you. Because like for you, in this instance, it's like, you're not going to work with this person. Like, you don't need the money that much to be like, okay, this is what I'm going to deal with. But there's a lot of companies that are over there that they're a mid-sized company. And it's like, okay, well, how are you going to address it? I'm not.
Oh, that's fun.
Right.
So,
and it's like, you need to do that. I mean, it's like, and also too, I'm not a big proponent of, and it's, and I always get, like, I just speak my mind in a way that's like, I try to understand all aspects. Like, I'm working on a project for the 50th anniversary of hip hop. So would you think I know a lot about hip hop? Probably not. But growing up where I grew up and dancing my entire life, and it's and the partner that I'm working with, started the whole neo soul movement. So him and I, when we work together, it's because we have such a strong relationship, and we can say whatever we want, and that's always because it's about the respect and it's about understanding, and like, we'll tease each other about stuff, and that's a good thing. Like, I hate cancel culture because there needs to be a learning curve. That what should be said, what shouldn't be said, and understanding it, because when everything is just canceled out, there's not lessons that are learned.
No opportunity to learn, for sure. Yeah.
And that's where I'm a Gen Xer. So it's like, my generation is very different. So when I see these clients and I say, okay, even though I'm their event professional, even though the person, like, I'm helping them build a department, like, I've lived in Miami, I've lived in New York, I've lived in Dallas, I've lived in LA, I've lived in San Francisco. I've seen the different aspects in this country, and good, bad, and different. But it's like, okay, a lot of people try to center themselves in one area and only believe what's around in that location. It's almost like we're all separate countries, which is kind of scary. But the goal is, when these things happen, it's like, well, how do you fix it? And most people don't want to fix it. And that's my challenge that I see more than anything else.
I mean, like, a lot of it comes from like education. While you were talking, I did take the time to look up if Easter was a federal holiday. It's not a federal holiday. However, I mean, like for me, like my team is built up of people from like literally all across the world. Like they actually start at the beginning of every year, they send their list of holidays. and I just know that they're off that day. And this is what it is.
It goes back to the international side. It's like, okay, that's, it's like, this is what you do. That's cool.
What you have religious holidays? You have days you want to take off? January, let me know. And then it's quite easy that way. All right, running it back a little bit, because we seem to be very tangential today. Your events often have like a celebrity component.
Mm-hmm.
What does it really mean, and why do you have those celebrity components? Like you have one where like I think it's called Back Office Serving for a Cure. It's like it was a fundraising event. Like Wyclef Jean was there. He was a musical guest. Like, how did you feel like that added to the event, and like why was that important?
So Back Office, they were the premier sponsor. It was IMG World. It was for James Blake, the tennis professional. It was for his foundation. Okay. So James was I believe it was his father that had passed away from cancer. So this was a cancer support event that was nonprofit. But when you're charging a top dollar ticket item, and you're doing kind of an event that you really want to get noticed and have the media pick it up. Unfortunately, if you don't have a celebrity, it just doesn't. And in that particular event, we actually had Anna Wintour was there, John Mayer was there. John didn't perform, just Clef performed. Mm-hmm. But, just knowing, just the kind of the aspect of it, it was a full tennis match, and Andy Roddick was there also too, where they basically had a charitable game, which is cool to see, especially in Pier 92, 94, because it's just a pier that we literally put a full tennis court. We put everything in there. But after that, people want to drink, they want to party, they want to dance. And as much as they enjoyed the tennis and were tennis, most of them are tennis fans, they basically, when that curtain went down and all the food was there and Clef starts performing, it gets them excited. It gets them, interested. And it also got us a ton of press. That's like when you see most of those pictures, you see those pictures with James and Clef on the stage holding hands, like, just, really building kind of that camaraderie and understanding of, what they're here to do as much as people are having a good time doing it. So it's unfortunately or fortunately, our country is a very celebrity driven culture. Mm-hmm. And it closes the deal. It gets the attendance. It gets the, and especially I think with social media now, it's gotten even worse where everybody thinks they're a celebrity. And that's kind of hilarious too. I'm like, oh, okay. That's, I didn't know you're an influence. Good for you. And
okay.
Not sustainable, but okay. But,
we let people live.
It's hard. It's so hard. I don't know.
Well, talking about social media, you have a Twitter post on your company page that says like presentation is everything, but how important is branding in relation to corporate events? I think we talked a little bit about it when we were talking about like the Wales event. So talk to me about like branding in relationship to corporate events.
It's what are your core pillars? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to do for the event? That's always my question. Like, what is this event for? Okay, it's, client appreciation. It's, internal company appreciation. It's getting our name out there. What are you trying to do? And, that's always the question that I ask. And every time I ask that question, the client that reaches, answers it back. They're just like, why are you asking me a dumb question? I'm like, it's not a dumb question, because most people don't know what you're trying to do with this event. Like, are you trying to get sales? Are you trying to do that? Like, what do you want to do with this? So once we understand what that is and understand the pillars of the company or the branding or the concept or what they're trying to do, whether it's a brand launch, whether it's, just getting a ton of media, whether it's, a great conference that they all want to go down and reward their salespeople. Knowing what those aspects are, that's how I kind of mold the event around that and tie in the business with it. But also too, it's also, what is that experience? Because I'm a big proponent of full sensory experiences, because everybody uses the words experiential. It's like, they don't know what that word means. So experiential, it's like, you want to walk away from this event, feeling it, tasting it, smelling it, touching it, hearing it. How are you going to do that? And it could be something as simple as, you know, just velvet chairs or a different kind of texture for something, you know, hearing a certain sound that might be birds in the background. If you're in a cocktail reception, you're doing this whole beautiful, you know, garden area. Yeah, exactly. You know, any of that stuff where it's how do you create that experience and really build it where people remember it versus it being just something that's like, oh, here's a table over here, here's a bar over here, here's some chairs over here. And, you know, that's what it is. Because most people say event planning is easy. It is. You're just not doing it right, but that's fine. I mean, like, you can Google it, you can Google anything, and then, you know, and then you don't negotiate a contract and you get sued. But, you know, hey, like that's where it gets challenged.
What is one mistake you've seen corporate event planners make in relation to branding that makes you kind of like cringe?
Throwing the logo everywhere. I hate that. I hate that. And the reason I hate that is because it's like, like if you're going down the street and like for instance, if you're driving to Las Vegas, you know, you see billboard after billboard after billboard. Are you really reading what's going on?
After a while, you stop.
Yeah, you stop. You might read the first one, but you're not going to read everything. So when you look at that in that aspect, you look at that from an event side, and that's the kind of thing where if it's subliminal, it goes far more, you know, you get more bang for your buck than you do just like throwing logos all over, because that's not branding to me. Whether it's a certain color palette you're using, whether it's like, I mean, you maybe do some branding in the cocktails or do the branding in a different way that like people are just not expecting it and seeing it. It's that to me is more impactful than doing something that's like, oh, here's another logo or here's a pillow with a logo on it. It's just that's not it. It's about an experience, because when you create that experience, I mean, I had done an event for Finlandia and we did these ice sculptures, and I came up with this concept. I was now I'm going to date myself. I was watching like the Tyra Banks show one day, and she was on there ice. I know this. I'm telling you, I'll dial this stuff back. I dial it back to randomness. And I was watching the show, and she was trying to learn how to ice skate on TV, which was a hot mess in itself. But it was one of those things where I was like, where did they get the plastic ice? Where did they like? So then I'm online researching, and I'm like, instead of getting a performer that's like a dancer or what they normally do, like, oh, we'll have some music, it'll be a vibey event because it's an alcohol brand, you know, they like to have kind of that nightlife party. Let's get an ice, you know, a skater to perform on the plastic ice as the dancer and do something cool like that. People still remember it. They still, you know, they talk about the ice sculpture, they talk about the different things, but they say, oh, I remember that Finlandia event with the ice skater. And that's where your branding is. You know, it's not like if they went to a Finland, like there's so many events I've gone to that I can't, some of them I can remember, some of them I can't, you know, just depending on if there was something that was different. But like, those are those types of things where they turn around and go, oh, yeah, I remember that. And then that's where that brand is. Or they're in the store saying, oh my God, that was the brand that had the ice skater. I'm going to pick that brand versus, I don't know, you know, some other one that would be a comparable vodka. So yeah, I mean, that's those differences that make those impact versus like, I did another event for the Story of America for the History Channel. Okay. And we did it at Ellis Island. So in Ellis Island,
pictures. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is too, I mean, what was so great is they saw, you know, they had a cocktail. They actually were on a boat ride. They had to come from New York, obviously. Most people don't know you can get to Ellis Island in the car, like in a car on land through Jersey City, but it's really only if you're doing an event and they have like a whole area in the back, but most people have to get to Ellis Island on a boat. And, you know, they took the boat from Battery Park, went around the Statue of Liberty, ended up on Ellis Island, had a cocktail reception with the whole view of downtown New York, which is, you know, absolutely breathtaking. But when they came inside, they saw a snippet of the Story of America, which was, you know, the whole concept of coming to Ellis Island and things like that. And when they went upstairs, they didn't realize where they were having their dinner was in the exact spot where most of their ancestors took their first footsteps here on, you know, US soil coming here, trying to start a new life in a new country.
Yeah.
And the fact that, and it still gives me chills, because it's like you're taking that moment that you just watched and making it so present, and then just being in that same room. And then obviously we had the stars on the ceilings, and we had the, all the different flags from all over the world were all pin spotted, and the tables were pin spotted. And you literally saw them take their breath away of that, and it just hit home, and it created that memory that they'll tell their grandchildren about that. And that's cool. Like, that to me is gratifying. And that really makes the difference of really kind of making an impact versus it just being, oh, it's another party. It's like, that is something that not only they saw, they witnessed, but they experienced, they felt, they heard, because it, the room echoes, and just the sound and the even the smell. I mean, it's an old building. It doesn't smell great, but it's like, it's also one of those things of understanding this is history. And a lot of people get tied up in what TV and just like this instant gratification versus really truly understanding, how we ended up here. Because I think that's important. And and there's always good stories, and there's bad stories, and there's different stories that come with it. But it also comes back to really just respecting the fact of like, hey, Ellis Island's Ellis Island. I mean, and to do a whole thing there and actually be in those same spots. I mean, listen, my family was from there. I mean, my grandmother's side, they were able to actually find the 13 individuals that had come over and the picture of the boat. And it's where you're from, and not everybody is from there, but a lot of the people in the room had that experience, and they're going to take that away from, for the rest of their lives. They're going to remember that. And that's cool, I think.
No, what that is experiential, truly experiential.
Yeah.
Well, Miss Christy Bareijsza, guess what? I have my very last question for you. I'm so excited that I got a chance to chat with you. It's very, very interesting, but I never want anyone to leave without a recommendation. And to be honest, this is really just about people just building up my book list. What is one book, blog, magazine, or a podcast you recommend corporate event planners and marketers should read or listen to learn how to represent a brand an event in an impactful way, like you did with working with the History Channel?
There's two. There's two of them. I'm old school in that sense. I still swear by BizBash, and I still swear by Smart Meetings magazine. And the reason I do is I am not a proponent of copying other ideas. I'm a proponent of being inspired by them, because I also think you can listen to things and you can hear things, but you need to open your eyes and look. Like the example with the Tyra Banks, thing. Like, I was watching TV randomly about a talk show, and there was an inspiration. I look at things online and I see those inspirations. Like it just might be a drink, or it might be, we were joking about these royal, they'd have those Turn Me Royal, designs where they take the picture and I think the Kardashians had done something like that, but we were coming up with an idea of bringing people back to the 70s and turning them 1970s. And so you could take a concept that you saw and you're like, oh, that's cool, they did that. How am I going to make it my own concept? Because even a lot of times with like TikTok and a lot of, just the different elements that are out there, people have become so accustomed to replicating, like, let's replicate this dance move. Let's use another soundbite. And it's always the same thing over and over and over again. I always push people to find their authentic self, who you are. Come up with your own creativity. You can be inspired and you can do an homage too, but it's also, how do you twist it to make it different? And that comes from life. That comes from putting your phone down when you're walking down the street, listening to things, hearing things, smelling, and I'm I'll get caught up in technology too, but it's kind of, and listen to your inner voice. Like, your intuition is huge. I mean, there's things that I'll dream about something and I'll wake up and I'll write it down. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, oh, and I might not use it today or tomorrow, but at some point it comes into play. And that's the thing that I think is important. So you have those kind of visuals, you have the kind of learning how to do it, because they also offer a lot of advice because as much as you can be creative, if you don't do it right and you do it in a way that's like, negotiating contracts, protecting yourself, having the proper insurances, food and beverage, really understanding allergies and cuisines and the boring side of it that a lot of people talk about. If you need that side of it too, but you also need that other side of you just want to be different. I don't know. I think I don't want to be the same. I want to be different, and that's what I think makes it great. And that goes back to the conversation we had of, hiring diverse people and working with international cultures and respecting those things. It's like, it all kind of comes down to making you or your brand or what you give out to clients authentic. And that's the thing. It's like, you can like me, you can hate me, but I'm a straight shooter, and that I'm always going to try to do what's best and best for you in a way that, I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. I'd like to think I am, but I'm far from it. But there's, and that it's learning, and it's always, what are the trends? I mean, we don't know. Our economy might go a little bit left now. So how does this become? How do I impact? Because you don't want events to go away, but now how are we going to work with half the budgets, or how is it still going to be?
That's a real thing. That's a real thing.
And the expectations are still there. Yeah. So how do you manage that? So I think that's kind of, there's a lot that goes into just always kind of doing research in a way that's fun, where you're just aware of, versus just going, oh, she did this, so I'm going to do this, or I'm going to change that. Because in this world too, it's there's not a lot of proprietary information, because if you create an event and you change the color of it, it's no longer yours. Yeah. So it's great when you're pitching, but with that said, it's like, but if you're really truly making something your own, it's people can't replicate when you're that original, which is kind of cool. Absolutely. At least I like to think, or they do it, they just don't do it as well as you do. So you just have to be the best out there.
Well, thank you so much, Christy. I appreciate you. And I know that everybody listening to this is going to be super excited to just absorb all the information. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Eventus 365. We hope you enjoyed listening and learning something new today. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform to help event professionals discover us. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and sign up for our newsletter for behind-the-scenes content and updates on upcoming events. If you have any suggestions for future topics or guests, or just want to say hello, you can reach us at info@eventus365.com. We love hearing from our listeners. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Eventus 365.